can learn a lot from the data pool that's available. You just got to ask it the right questions. Put together that big picture so you can move into management. Like ask yourself, why do we collect a certain document for the TMF? What purpose does it serve? And how does this fit into the bigger picture? Why do we follow X process? Is there a better way of doing things without negatively impacting all the functional lines we work with? You change one thing here and everybody's whole world shatters. And it just clicks and they're like, oh, really?
TMF Elite, welcome back to the show. With a podcast name like TMF Daily, it's no surprise we often talk about trial master file careers and career paths. Today, we're talking about a consultant role in the trial master file. My guest today, Ackley-Fifer. There's nothing this girl can't do that is TMF related, from being a TMF lead resource, evaluating processes, system configurations, to migrations. Hey, Ann, welcome to the TMF Daily Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I am just so excited for today's episode. And you're just a master of many TMF trades. And you've had this incredible journey to becoming a senior consultant TMF services delivery lead. So what really sparked your passion in this field?
Well, if you go by my undergraduate degree, you wouldn't think it would lead to clinical research. I took Japanese studies because I was a girl who loved anime. But I kind of fell into this completely by accident 18 years ago. But the skills that I needed to do well in TMF were already there innately as an autistic person. Pattern recognition, obsessive attention to detail, really strong drive to keep things lined up and organized. Yeah, passion was fueled by discovering I had a knack for it. So
how did you get into the industry?
So I got in on ground level. I had an opportunity to come in as a document indexer. So I had no clinical research experience up to that point. And then I just started reverse engineering the whole process. The documents come in, they tell you about everything. So I started putting the big picture together and worked my way up from there.
So even with your studies, did you ever have to take a clinical research course?
I did actually end up going back for graduate studies at Drexel University after I started in the industry. And I got most of the way through my master's degree, but I unfortunately had some health issues that prevented me from completing the degree. But I did get a chance to go back to school and learn more about the clinical research process.
Fascinating. So you got your first role as a TMF indexer. You had to learn clinical research like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and the role itself, like the TMF.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Because a lot of people don't really talk about, okay, yeah, I had to learn the role, but I didn't also have to learn clinical research. That brings a whole nother set of challenges.
Well, let's see. Going through that process was more for my benefit so I could index faster. Like if I understood the process better, I'd know where the documents went better. So, it started out with some documents that were some basic ones, some similar ones. And then I started branching out more and more into, the different functional areas. God, that was so long ago.
I know, right? I'm bringing you way back. We're starting chapter 1.
So yeah, doing some of the same documents over and over obviously got me familiar with them, but other documents came in, branched out, and started learning the documentation in the other functional areas besides like your typical study startup documents, the ones you see day after day.
Mm-hmm. Now, how was the training involved? Was it sort of like the typical swim or die, or here's your SOPs, figure it out?
Well, there's always reading the SOPs, and of course, I tried my best to learn them and understand them, but really getting in there and doing the job every day is what really solidified it for me.
Right. It's like learning a new language with all the acronyms.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, there's a reason I'm a good librarian, is because I don't remember things very, very well, but I know where my references are. So like a good index,
Let's talk about what's a typical day like in your current role and what keeps you motivated?
Well, there really is no typical day as a consultant because, it can look any number of ways depending on what the client wants. That's the best part about being a consultant is you have that flexibility to fill an unmet need wherever that is. That could be, at the point of eTMF system selection, consulting on, basically what the business needs and, what different products might work best for them, what eTMF system might work best for them, through the implementation, change management, or, managing a study, and then all the way through study archival. It can really be anywhere along that process. One of the things I've done is I've acted as the sole TMF representative for a small company that outsources their work to a CRO. And they didn't have like a dedicated oversight person within the company. So they hired me to come in and provide that CRO oversight. Also, too, I've done process analysis and made suggestions on how to streamline processes for a client that already had a TMF system and was, looking to improve their ways of working.
Now, is there like one thing that's more exciting when you get assigned to it where you're like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air opposed to like another task?
I would have to say it's when I get the study teams to click. Everybody is like, oh, filing, it's not important. But, when you show them how getting their filing done and the metadata that's entered into the system and how they can mine that. For instance, one of the things that I like to do is show the CRAs, like, if you filter for expiration dates that are coming up in the next 30 days, boom, you have a list of stuff to grab at the site. And it just clicks and they're like, oh, really? But, that isn't in there if you don't get your documents in there. You only have the data that you feed the system. So it gives them a little bit of motivation to say, all right, it's not just filing. I can get this thing to help me do my job.
We've come a long way with all these eTMF systems and the way that they can filter and the metrics that we can track. It makes it like super easy as long as you know that those options are available. Like you said, like, hey, CRA, did you know you could do this in the system? And like having that light bulb just click. So what would you say are like some of the key skills and attributes that you believe that are essential for success in your position?
In modern times, I would say it's a data manager's mindset, because every TMF document that you have has critical data on it, key dates when study events happened, and, being able to know where to look for each data type and how to effectively use that metadata for organization and analyzation. Quick retrieval is crucial to success. So I would say data manager's mindset is where you want to be these days.
Yeah. And that's exactly like where we're at right now. We're data managers for the trial master file, just analyzing data. We don't just file documents.
Nope. We're data library managers.
Now, every job, it has its challenges. And what are some big obstacles you face in ensuring the TMF is delivered effectively, and how do you tackle them?
Biggest challenge is getting that functional area buy-in, because they've got their jobs to do, and the last thing on their mind is getting their documents in the system. But again, with the practical example of showing the CRA, how to get their expired documents list, like, boom, out of the system. I mean, being able to, share use cases with each functional area really is how I overcome that challenge.
Everybody knows this in the industry. There's a lot of layoffs, which brings a lot of challenges, especially with like the TMF departments. And so with the layoffs brings an increase in workload for the individuals that got to stay. Sometimes the TMF gets neglected, right? It's not a priority until it's a priority. You know what I'm talking about. Oh,
yeah. Inspector banging on the door. Yeah.
Then eventually we have to hire help again at some point to fix this mess. Have you been in those types of situations?
I've not been in a situation where there's been a large reduction in staff, although I do recall a time at an organization when, somebody had left and my study load went from 12 studies to 18 studies as a TMF lead. And it's impossible for any one person to effectively manage that many studies. So you have to use a risk-based analysis really to go in there and say, what's the most important things? What can I get done in the time that I have? Or you just run around in circles. So I've had a situation where I've had a very heavy study load due to somebody leaving, not due to a layoff though, but somebody had left and I had to take on half of their studies.
And even as a consultant, have they brought you in to kind of clean up the mess where it's like, oh, we haven't looked at the TMF in 6 months. Can you fix it? Where's your magic wand?
I've done peek-ins for sure, to get a pulse on where things were. And then, obviously outputs for remediation, identifying patterns, and not just like the individual items, but larger patterns so that they can make the corrective actions within their organization.
Yeah, it's such a interesting time right now watching the TMF. So staying ahead in this industry, it requires continuous learning. How do you keep yourself updated with the latest trends and developments in the TMF?
Well, I do follow CDISC to stay ahead of TMF reference model changes and learn about some of the other standards that they're developing. I'm really excited about, when you speak the same language and standards, you have that easy interconnectivity with other systems. They all talk to each other in the same language. I also did receive my associate administrator certificate from Viva Vault platform. And
congratulations.
Thank you. It was a lot and required ongoing certification too. And, Viva's not the only system that I work with, but learning things from the back end on that platform can help me understand functionality across systems. That can be abstracted across. A lot of the functionality is shared. It just looks different on the front end, like what menus, what buttons to push, but the functionality is similar amongst all the different systems.
So let's keep going on that technology train. We know it's playing such a significant role in TMF management. So how has it changed the landscape of the work, and what kind of tools do you rely on the most?
Well, when I started out, it was largely in a paper world that was being digitized rather than data being actively managed. Technologies evolved to give us capabilities and the ability to effectively use the tools we're given. It seems to be lagging behind, though, for most non-TMF focused positions. There's definitely magic when I'm able to make a connection with somebody showing how to get the system to work for them. You can learn a lot from the data pool that's available. You just got to ask it the right question. So it's just teaching them how to ask it a question. And that's by means of filters and views and whatnot, depending on the system being used. But basically, when you're using filters, you're querying a database.
Give us a couple examples of good questions to ask.
Oh, goodness. You want to know timeliness. So you look at the document date, and then you look at the date the document was uploaded, and you can get an idea of timeliness for most documents. Some documents, might have like CVs and whatnot are not good to use that metric on, but pretty much anything else besides licenses and CVs, you can get an idea of timeliness, even if the system itself does not have a timeliness tool built in. You can say, oh, well, look at the date difference between the document date and when it was indexed. There's additional complications to that, like if a sponsor, say, doesn't index a full study startup package until it's complete and ready to go. So that can further complicate those timeliness metrics. But you can get a basic idea of timeliness using that if you filter out the documents that don't follow the rules.
So speaking of timeliness, it got me thinking. Study startup, sponsors want the sites up and running very fast because time is of the essence. What kind of tips or tricks do you have to get those documents in fast so we can get the sites activated?
Set aside time each week to do it, because if you just say you're going to do it, phone calls happen, emails happen, meetings happen. If you set aside the time to focus just on the TMF, will motivate you to get it done.
Yeah, that's always the key. Set the time aside, say you're going to do it, stop the procrastination, and just get it done. Yeah. Put your nose in the computer and get it done.
Yeah, I'm the type of person that can't, jump from thing to thing to thing to thing real fast. I like to focus on the one the one thing in hand. So having that block of time was crucial for me back when I indexed documents. So
I feel like that's just like a skill you have when you work in the TMF. Like you can't get pulled in a lot of directions. You can't have somebody yapping in your ear because you're going to make a mistake.
Yep.
You literally like nose in the computer. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
It's like one of those soft skills you got to have if you want to work in the TMF.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like stress, because sometimes working in clinical research, it can be very stressful. So how do you manage stress and maintain like a work-life balance in such a demanding field?
Well, I just take things day by day, really, because if you're thinking about next week, you're not focusing on what you need to do. So anything else that sounds like a magical bandage to this issue is someone trying to sell you something, honestly. There is no magical bandage to this. It's one day at a time.
And what type of advice would you give to individuals who maybe like they see the email come in, it's after hours, the pressure's on, do you respond? Do you not respond? Can it wait? Because we're all guilty of it.
I would say I draw a heavy line between work time and not. I work from home, so it would be very easy for me to, and it's very rare something that urgent comes in after hours. We're all pretty respectful here of everybody's time. I would say, unless there's an inspector banging down the door, it can wait. It can wait.
I like that. That's a very good motto. So let's talk about mentorship. Have you ever had mentors throughout your career, and how have they influenced your journey?
Oh, goodness. My very first TMF mentor was Linda Lockwood. I wish she were still around to hear me give this shout out, but hopefully she's listening from the heavens. I had zero experience in clinical research and only about a year and a half's worth of administrative type work at the time of my interview in 2006. Guess she saw something in me, hired me anyways as a document management assistant. She guided me in TMF best practices, encouraged my continued climb up the ladder, but also, too, she mentored me in the fine art of office social expectations. It's something that wasn't an intuitive thing for me. Her willingness to let my talents outshine my social mishaps let me grow into the successful person I am today. So thank you, Linda, for taking a chance on me and putting me on the TMF career path.
Aww. Well, she must have saw something in you too, that like innate ability to want to learn and pursue the career.
Yes.
You don't just invest in anybody.
Yeah.
And I can see that in you too. Like you're a go-getter because literally there's nothing you can't do. If you're willing to learn, you've learned it.
I kind of like the whole jack of all trades sort of way of working because, you get into a little bit of everything and then you see how all those parts relate to each other. And then you're just pretty flexible. You can move in and, fill an unmet need with your clients.
So you're never bored, are you?
No. And always willing to learn a new skill.
What are the top 3 pieces of advice you would give someone who's like aspiring to climb the ladder in TMF services?
Oh, 3 pieces. I mean, we could sum it up with dig deep and ask a lot of questions, put together that big picture so you can move into management. Like ask yourself, why do we collect a certain document for the TMF? What purpose does it serve? And how does this fit into the bigger picture? Why do we follow X process? Is there a better way of doing things without negatively impacting all the functional lines we work with? You change one thing here and everybody's whole world shatters, So just start asking those questions and it'll really help you not only understand your direct job, but maybe help you to be able to branch out into other areas.
And that's almost a skill in itself right there. Like, how do you ask questions but not sound dumb? Or like think, I want to ask this question, but I don't want my trainer to think I'm stupid.
There's no stupid questions. The only stupid question is the one not asked. And I know that's so cliche, but I mean, just think of databases. You have to ask them questions or you just get the whole blob of data, right? So, it's important asking questions, and a good leader will indulge even the dumbest sounding questions because, you're filling in those logic gaps for yourself, and that's important.
So if you could go back to the start of your career, what advice would you give to like your younger self?
I would say never stop learning, because the industry is evolving, and if you're not continuously learning, you're going to be left in the dust. So just keep learning and expand your skill set.
Perfect. So I always ask 2 questions at the end of the show to everybody. The first one is, what's the best career advice that you've ever received, and who was it by?
I'm paraphrasing here, but in response to my tendency towards brutal perfectionism, sometimes I only pick on my mistakes instead of celebrating my successes. My mentor, Terry Montez, tells me not to short sell myself, and she's right. She's right. I need to start looking at the things I'm doing right, not all the nitpicky little things that I missed. If you look at the complete data set instead of the biased pieces, that I'm doing all right. So yeah, I need to curb my perfectionism. Thanks, Terry.
I think it's like an industry type A personality that we have.
Yeah.
Like you have to be a perfectionist to work in the industry, and we are our worst critics.
Mm-hmm.
We're kinder on other people, but we're harder on us.
Oh, I'm very forgiving of other people's mistakes, but if I make a mistake, I'm picking on myself all day about it. I'm really mean to me, and I need to not be.
It's true. It's so true. What is your favorite TMF document and why?
I would say it's the protocol, because if you think about it, it's the centerpiece of the whole trial. Like most of the other documents that go in the TMF are in support of proving that either the protocol was followed or had appropriate sponsor regulatory oversight. So the protocol is the centerpiece of it all, I think.
Well, and thank you so much for joining us on the TMF Daily Podcast. Let's stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.